One of the greatest challenges is in the way that people grow businesses from that kind of side of, I get an apprentice, then I get somebody else, I get somebody else. It's not really planned. It kind of happens when you're really, really busy. And the challenge with growing a business when you're really, really busy, you probably want to take on your first person when you're at 80% capacity. Most people wait till they're probably about 120% capacity. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I need a bum on a seat.
I'm laughing because that's what we do.
But it becomes really difficult, doesn't it? Because then you kind of go, oh crikey, I need somebody desperately.
Yeah.
I'll take somebody because they're going to be supportive effectively.
If you were to create your perfect construction business as such, which utilizes AI, like how would that look? As looking at it from like a holistic perspective.
So I think it could help in terms of lead generation. It could certainly happen in terms of consistency of message, consistency of activity, how we follow up with people.
You're starting out in business in construction, what you'd look at to try and improve the business. But say you were established and you operating on a, like a turnover of maybe £3 to £5 million and you wanted to get to 10 to 15 to 20.
Yeah.
What areas would you look at trying to develop within the business to be able to get you to that level?
I think first off is...
So what could be maybe a quick introduction to AI that they could introduce into their business if they're not using it already?
So I think one of the best places to start, and again, look, there becomes a why question. Why do we need it? Is it right for us? But this is the one time, and it's my plea, I suppose, to everybody that might be listening, it's the one time where you cannot bury your head in the sand. It is coming fast, and it will be the greatest differentiator in terms of competitors that there has ever been.
Which is interesting because AI specifically in construction maybe isn't as well utilised as maybe other industries. Why do you think that is, and how do you think people could be using it more?
Now the challenge for most is I think they kind of look at it as, that's ChatGPT, that's writing a post, it's helping us with a little bit of text. And yes it is, and that's most people's exposure to it. But when you build AI into the systems that you might already have and go, okay, so AI can extract some of that information, it can analyse it, it can clean it up, it can put it into the next part of the process. When you train it so that it now thinks like your business, it's context, then all of a sudden it becomes one of the most powerful tools you could ever have.
Simon, welcome to SQFT-Stories.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you finally. I've been following you online.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for coming down and making the trip down.
Pleasure.
This is a unique episode for me because obviously you come from a sort of like a coaching perspective, business coaching perspective. So I haven't had anyone on from that perspective. So it's going to be interesting to pick your brains, and I'll be asking you some questions that I want to know myself.
Well, let's hope that there's something that comes in a bit where you kind of go, I didn't know that, or I hadn't heard that before. Otherwise it could be a waste of an hour.
But give us a bit of an idea of sort of like how you made your way into the business coaching world, I suppose, and why you did it.
Completely by accident. So many, many moons ago, I was going to be an outdoor pursuits instructor. I spent all my childhood kind of climbing and canoeing and going up mountains and bits and pieces. And then I ended up in the sort of the design world. So I went into packaging, and then I moved into marketing, then I moved into sales and account management, and then I became a business unit director, really starting to kind of understand business. And I probably spent best part of almost 20 years in and around that environment. And I was in a business where I was a co-director, and my co-director turned around one day and said, "Oh, I'm leaving. I'm going to become a business coach." And I was going, "What the hell's a business coach?" Because I'd never really been exposed to it at that point, and it was quite well known in Australia and America, but there weren't really. There was advisors around, I suppose, and fixers, but there weren't really coaches at that stage around. And I kind of thought, "Wow, this sounds fascinating." So I stalked him a little bit and sort of said, what you're doing and how you're doing it, and I suddenly realised it was probably everything I'd always wanted to do in life. It was trying to get the best out of people. It was understanding and getting under the skin of businesses really quickly, and then helping them grow and see things clearly that I seemed to have quite a unique ability to be able to do. Yeah. So completely by accident, and I've been doing it now for, this would be my 16th year.
16 years in business.
16
business
years.
Coaching, I suppose.
Yeah.
So it was almost your colleague, was it, or your business partner, I suppose?
It was, so somebody, we weren't, it was, I wasn't in there as an owner-managed business, I was a director within it, and he left and became a coach. So I just kind of watched, what was it, what did it look like? And ironically, not long before, so at the point in which he left, bizarrely, we then had a business coach come into the business that I was working in. And all of a sudden, everything kind of like made sense. It was, set long-term goals. Okay, I understood all of that. And probably what I thought business coaching was at that stage was all about the business. And that might sound a little bit weird, right? But I kind of thought it was everything that you need to do. It's the KPIs, it's the plans, it's the strategies, the goals. What I didn't realise at that stage until perhaps I became a coach myself was just how much it's about the individual. It's about the business owner. The business always seems to be a direct reflection of the business owner, their personality, their style, their values, their purpose. That's the bit that makes the difference. So I kind of looked at it as there's two sides to supporting a business. There's the stuff you need to do, and there's who you need to be. And I perhaps hadn't quite understood just how much of it there is in terms of who you need to be. So yeah, that's been a fascinating part of the journey.
So when you say there's two sides of it, how much do you think that we, I suppose, as like UK entrepreneurs or business owners, how much do you think we focus on one side rather than the other?
It's a great question. I think that historically it was all about what you needed to do. It was actions, activities. It was the measures, the KPIs, those sorts of things. I think over the last 10 years has been a massive shift. Not only, I suppose, because we've been aware of it. I think through things like this that we're doing today, there is just so much more general awareness and education around. We've got some amazing, I suppose, entrepreneurs out there that as personal brands really talk a lot about kind of like who they are as opposed to just what they do. And that's made a massive, massive difference. And I'm a huge fan also of somebody like Simon Sinek and this whole kind of like starting with why. So purpose, I think, has really become important. And there's a whole generation of people coming through in industry now where purpose is everything. And I think that's made a lot of businesses and business owners sit up and look and sit up and think about, well, who do we need to be in order to attract the right people as opposed to just what is it that we do.
Interesting. You are right, though, because a lot of people do. So maybe 5 to 7 years ago, I hadn't even really thought of coaching as an option, I suppose, for anything in a life, I suppose, like fitness coaching, business coaching, life coaching, I suppose. You wouldn't, maybe 10 years ago, I didn't have thought of it. Early 20s probably wouldn't have even sprung to my mind. But the amount of awareness around it now and the amount of people that vouch for coaching, not just in business, it's just in anything you're doing almost. And then when you kind of like lift the rug up or peel the carpet back as such, you almost understand like, well, of course, if I'm doing something with my life properly and I want to do it properly, of course, I'll get coaching to do it to the level I want to do it at. But it wasn't really.
I think it used to be though that coaching in business almost used to be for the underperformer, whereas coaching in sport used to be for the top performer. And I think that's where there was this kind of like this real split. Whereas now it's not I've got this person who really needs some help. It's I've got this great guy who I think can be even better still. And that's been, I think, the biggest shift. It's moved away from fixing to good to great. So I think there's been a real emphasis now on you give it to the best performers. And it's an interesting one because if you look at, again, if you go back to sport, you don't have a great coach in that gets you to the top of the league or to the top of the performance and then going to go finish, fantastic, don't need a coach anymore. It's the ones that keep going and going, right, is it a different coach now? Is it a different person that I need to be able to support things? So I think the whole emphasis has completely changed to how do we ensure that everybody can be the best that they can be?
So when you kind of started making started the venture into business coaching, what were the basic things that you were noticing in people who may need coaching in a business world? So what did you like identify and think like the basic things people could change quite quickly?
And if you look at, I suppose, where most of your clients and perhaps most of your listeners are within the kind of the construction industry, it was primarily about understanding the numbers. And it wasn't about, I suppose, there's lots of numbers that your accountant's got, which are all the lagging numbers. They're all the historical ones, the ones that, to be totally honest with you, can do very little with. Yeah. They're just there because they have to be there. It's the what do they tell us? Now, I think a lot of industries think that there are surprises that come in their industries. But if you look back and you really start to use the numbers properly, there are very few surprises. Most things are quite predictable. Most things have got a trend associated with them. Win rates, conversion rates, what your profit looks like in certain areas, seasonality curves, all of those sorts of things, the average order value, the jobs that we win, why we're winning in certain areas and not in others. All of those things are there, but we don't look at them in quite the same way. So I think sometimes the numbers that were being kept in the business were there for the accountant, not necessarily there for what's the business intelligence, what's it telling us, what is it that we can actually do with this? And then they stop becoming lagging numbers and they start to become leading numbers. They start to tell you a story about what's going to happen, not just what happened. And that's the biggest shift, I think. And there's massive easy wins in there. First off, if you're not carrying numbers, just start tracking them.
Yeah.
Because it's without the data, you can't really start to plan the stuff for the future. So you kind of got to go, well, have we got the data in the first place? And most people have got it somewhere, It's just that it's not been pulled together in a way that you really, really want to be able to use it properly.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a couple of people who have come on here who might be able to vouch for the side of that they never really tracked their finances, or that was their weak point. And they traditionally started as a hypothetically speaking, a carpenter or a plumber or an electrician who would be really, really good working on site, actually working delivering the service. But because they focused so much on delivering the actual physical service, they weren't aware, or they weren't as aware of the numbers. So I think that's a really typical thing in the construction industry. People
really typical.
Their really, really sole focus is on the delivery, which is brilliant. And you don't get any business without delivery. But they would the number side of it, and the accounting side, and understanding cash flow, I suppose, would be a bit of a problem.
It's the sort of thing you do when everything else has been done.
Yeah.
So it's like the last thing, we'll do the invoicing, perhaps we'll get the stuff off the accountant, perhaps we should have a look at the numbers. But because people are busy, you just don't pause for long enough to look at the important stuff. And you're absolutely right. I think most of some really, really successful and large trade construction businesses that I've worked with, if you ask them how they got there, they say, well, it kind of happened by accident.
Yeah.
It started off, it was me, then I got an apprentice, then before we knew it, we needed somebody else, and it just builds and grows. But nobody ever stopped to sort of say, well, how do you run a business? They were taught how to become a plumber, they were taught how to become an electrician, but nobody ever stopped and sort of said, how the bloody hell do you run a business? So the education side of it, in terms of, where are all the learnings, what does best practice look like, what are the things I should be focused upon, they're just not there. And quite often, and this is a massive assumption, I suppose, and perhaps a generalisation, but if you look at a lot of people in construction who've got a partner, it's quite often their partner that does the books. And again, somebody who didn't come in, just sort of took it to take some pressure off. Before you know it, you're running a multi-million-pound business without necessarily some of the proper constraints in place that should be there. Yeah,
so I suppose what I can extract from that is just for people listening as well, if they are a tradesman, I suppose, who are 1 to 2 men strong, them and an apprentice, the number side of it probably you need to be aware of them a little bit sooner rather than a little bit too late, I suppose.
Yeah, the earlier you can track it, the earlier you can get a great system. Look, MTD is coming around anyway, so for even the smaller one-man bands, you're going to have to. So as soon as you're having to put your numbers into something, you've got reports that you can get out of it. It's understanding, I suppose, what are the questions I would love to ask my business, and have I got the ability to be able to answer it? I think that one of the greatest challenges is in the way that people grow businesses from that kind of side of, I get an apprentice, then I get somebody else, is it's not really planned. It kind of happens when you're really, really busy. And the challenge with growing a business when you're really, really busy, you probably want to take on your first person when you're at 80% capacity. Most people wait till they're probably about 120% capacity. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I need a bum on a seat.
I'm laughing because that's what we do.
But it becomes really difficult, doesn't it? Because then you kind of go, oh crikey, I need somebody desperately.
Yeah.
I'll take somebody because they're going to be supportive effectively. It might not be the right person, but if you do it at 80%, you're kind of going, well, I can see that it's coming, so therefore I've got to think about it now. It's probably going to take at least 3 months to get a good person in place. So if you plan to grow, you're kind of almost, we should always be recruiting. We should always be looking. But I think people knee-jerk reaction to it, quick, get it out. And then it's like, oh yeah, they'll do. And before you know it, you didn't get the benefit that you hoped from it. And that's when people kind of go, well, I was better off on my own.
Do you think that's maybe the common fault of that is they're working so in the business rather than having a bit of an overview of it?
Absolutely. Go on, sorry.
No, I was going to say, because I kind of get it from that perspective, because if you're a tradesman by background, all you've ever done is worked in the business anyway. So when you get to the point where you're growing and growing and growing, it's quite difficult to do the other side because you're so used to doing one thing, so used to working in it. And then I suppose there's the control element, which a lot of people might struggle with, handing over the control to be able to relinquish them on some responsibility so they can actually work on it rather than in it.
It's a massive challenge to be able to let go. So there's some businesses where you can go and buy a business and you can run a business and you don't have to know anything about the business. It just kind of works. If you come from a trade perspective, often you can go and do the trade. So you can always get dragged back into it. You can always be that little bit of cover. Oh, we're a bit light today, let me jump in, etc. In a perfect world, you wouldn't be able to do it because then you'd have to find a way to find a solution to it. But you're right, is that the working on versus working in mentality is a really difficult one because when you're crazy busy and you've got to 10 o'clock at night and you sit down and you're going to go, right, do I want to think about recruitment now? Do I want to think about my numbers? I'm fried, I'm knackered. So I think it is purposefully carving out the time to work on it as opposed to work in it. If you don't plan for that, I hear a lot of people talk about hope. I hope to get this and hopefully that will happen, as opposed to hope is not a strategy. Let's plan to make sure that you've carved out the time to be able to look at those things so you're well informed and can make the right decisions.
Do you think working in the business and not being able to release control, I suppose, to allow you to work on it is a individual problem, or do you think that's the business's problem? Or
I think it's quite often an individual's problem because the business isn't set up to facilitate it.
Interesting.
And by that, I suppose what I mean is that most people see it as I've got to walk away, I've got to relinquish responsibility, and that's a really challenging thing to do when it's your baby. You grew up from scratch. Your name's on the door, your name's on the van, and then all of a sudden you're kind of like, oh my God, I've got to hand it across this other person. It's about, I suppose, well, in order to get comfortable with what I think is being done or what I think should be done, is the information transparent? Is it available somewhere? Can I see it? Have I got to go really digging for it? Have I got to go and ask everybody? Because I've got to go and ask everybody. I'm micromanaging. If I can see it, that it's happening the way I expect it, well, then you're into delegation as opposed to abdication mode. And it is that ability to be able to go, what do I need in order to feel comfortable, in order to be able to take a bit of a step away? And it isn't letting go. It is actually putting great control mechanisms in place to say, I'm comfortable. Because ultimately, look, we're control freaks in some way, shape or form because it was ours. Yeah. So we've got to try and find a way to get comfy with that. And that's a massive mindset shift. Massive mindset shift. So what can I see?
So I suppose from there, it's more like introducing systems and processes to allow you to be able to have visibility without being there physically, even though you will be there physically type. But
it's the unsexy stuff about growing a business, sadly. It's the systems and the processes are the bit that release you.
Yeah, but it's funny you say the unsexy because like the business nowadays is glossed up as a really sexy thing to do. You can drive your nice cars and you can have all these experiences and you can earn yourself money and you can like meet new people, but realistically it's like you said, it's extremely unsexy when you're actually doing it.
Look, it can be fantastic. It's the most rewarding thing in the world. It can create lifestyles that you can't get elsewhere. You can do all sorts of things. You get the autonomy, the decision making, all of that, but you get an awful lot of pain that comes alongside it. It's a flipping lonely place to be a business owner. The people that work for you quite often don't see the sleepless nights, the worry, the can we make payroll this month, all those challenges that come alongside it. But it's the systems and processes, that consistency, that ability to go day in, day out, week in, week out. We can see this, we understand what's going on. It doesn't matter who in my business gets this, there is a system and a process for it. And I'm kind of quite a fan of this almost like 80-20 mentality of if 80% of it just works, kind of like standardise the norm type stuff, well, then I can humanise the 20% that comes as the curveballs, the things I wasn't expecting, and the things that we've not seen before. But for most businesses, it's the other way around. Only 20% of it ever gets systemised. And we're trying to manually deal with 80% of it that comes at us. And that's where all the challenges come from.
So we've kind of covered if you're you're starting out in business in construction, what you'd look at to try and improve the business. But say you were established and you were operating on a turnover of maybe £3 to £5 million and you wanted to get to 10 to 15 to 20. What areas would you look at trying to develop within the business to be able to get you to that level?
Well, I think first off is why do you want to be that size and scale? You've got to be really, really clear about it. And I think some people will grow for the sake of growing, but don't really know why they're growing. If you're really, really clear about it's going to give us this, or it's going to allow us to do that, or it's going to get us of this size and scale and somebody might acquire us, or whatever your end goal might be, then there's a great reason for it. The next thing, I suppose, is having a clear plan about, which part of the business is going to have to look very, very different in order to be able to facilitate it. Because a 3 million versus a 15 million, 5 times growth, well, is that 5 times of everything? Is that 5 times busier? Or does it mean there's a shift in average order value? So it may be that you're just going after bigger projects. And sometimes bigger projects are a damn sight easier to run than they are small ones, because you still do the same amount of stuff. Whether it's got a £100,000 ticket on it or a £1 million ticket on it, you probably do exactly the same things.
Yeah, you are right.
So in terms of where your resource gets allocated across the business, it can sometimes be significantly more profitable to go for a bigger job, as long as you understand all the implications of cash flow and contract and risk and everything else. So I think it's about being super clear about why you want to do it in the first place, and then understanding which bit of the business will creak.
That's interesting. Sorry to interrupt, because something just came to my mind there where how frequent would you say that when people do want to, well, when people say speak to you about making that jump, how frequent do you find that they actually don't know why they want to do it? They just, maybe their ego take over, I suppose, or I don't know, like the monetary side of things might take over. They look at it and think like, oh, I want a big business. But how often do you find people don't actually know why they want to do it? They just want to do it.
Really often. I think sometimes there's an element of kind of almost peer pressure.
Yeah.
You have to be that size and scale will bring security. So quite often I hear, I want financial security. I want a business that has the potential to be sold in the future. I want a business that can potentially run without me. If it's that size and scale, I'll have to have the infrastructure that will release me. Yes, but not if you just do it by accident. If you do it by accident, you just get a whole lot busier with a whole lot more stress, with a whole lot more financial risk associated with it. And quite often the overheads just completely go out of kilter. But if you plan for where the pinch point is going to be, what part of the business do we need in terms of infrastructure to be able to facilitate it, what systems and processes will we need, then all of a sudden you kind of like, it changes your world a little bit. But again, it comes back to data, I think, quite often. Because if your current conversion rate is 1 in 4, let's just say, and all of a sudden, and your average order value is relatively small, you're doing an awful lot of quoting to get your £3 million turnover business. And you're looking at that and go, and now we're going to 5 times that? Well, which part of the business has got the best possible conversion rate? Do you really understand where your sweet spot is? Are you really poor at small stuff now? You're really poor at really big stuff, but you're actually somewhere in the middle is your absolute sweet spot. For some reason, you seem to land stuff there. Okay, so are we intentionally trying to find that kind of work? Because your conversion rate there might be 1 in 2. Well, great, now I don't need to 5 times stuff in quite the same way. I can actually change my mechanism in order to be able to get there. So data becomes really, really empowering, because most people fear growth because they just look at it, oh my God, that many more times busy. As opposed to, sometimes life actually becomes easier as long as you plan for the type of work that you want to have.
Interesting. It's interesting.
But it's often not thought about.
No, I know. It's just I'm almost recollecting whilst listening to you talk there that we've been through a bit of a journey as well in terms of like how to get to the next level and projects to take on, and do we relinquish projects that we are lower in value, I suppose, and do we take on the bigger ones, or do we stick to the sweet spot in the middle and just focus on them, and then ultimately the growth will come with it. We're in a bit of a stage like that at the moment, really, where so I was kind of recollecting whilst you were talking there. You've mentioned quite a lot about data and systems, and I know you're relatively in tune with like AI. I know you mentioned, you sent me something recently.
Huge fan of AI.
Yeah, because you sent me like a
there was an AI retreat.
AI retreat, that's
right, yeah.
Which is interesting because AI specifically in construction maybe isn't as well utilised as maybe other industries. Why do you think that is, and how do you think people could be using it more?
So I think that people are thinking about it from our industry is relatively safe from an AI perspective, and you're absolutely right. The challenge is most businesses, as they grow with turnover, they grow with overhead at an almost identical rate. So you get bigger and bigger, and you kind of go, I'm making no more money. Why is that? Because you've just had to invest all the time to be able to get there. I think this is one of the greatest opportunities. Like, I'm old, but I'm not as old as the Industrial Revolution. But if you look back and you kind of, this is the Industrial Revolution on steroids.
Wow.
It's going to go faster than anybody has ever even believed it was conceivable of doing.
Wow.
So if you think about every part of the business that isn't a physical part of the business, I'm not laying a brick, I'm not pulling a cable, I'm not kind of laying a floor, etc. There is a huge amount of stuff that happens behind the scenes. Acquiring clients, converting them, writing proposals, really time-consuming, costly stuff to do. Getting all of the prices from my supply base, understanding where those prices sit within it, forecasting, data analysis, RAMs. There's all this stuff that is a necessary part of growing your kind of business. AI has a huge, huge part to play in all of that. But I don't think people are necessarily kind of looking at it and going, so can I double the business but only add 2 more people? And in certain areas, you'll be able to do it. Because all of those old pinch points that used to exist, again, if we stop and ask ourselves the question, why is that person doing it? What's the part of their role that they're doing? You have to kind of like stop and analyse it a little bit. And then just the question becomes, could AI support it? Now, the challenge for most is I think they kind of look at it as, that's ChatGPT, that's writing a post, it's helping us with a little bit of text. And yes, it is, and that's most people's exposure to it. But when you build AI into the systems that you might already have and go, okay, so AI can extract some of that information. It can analyze it. It can clean it up. It can put it into the next part of the process. When you train it so that it now thinks like your business, what's its context, then all of a sudden it becomes one of the most powerful tools you could ever have. I kind of liken it to, you could turn around and say, well, let's get 10 apprentices in a business. Right? It's a bit like having AI. You go, fantastic, I've got all this resource. But you've got 10 apprentices looking at you going, what do you want me to do? So all of a sudden I've got all this resource. It was relatively cheap in comparison to what I had in the past. But it doesn't have a clue about your business and it doesn't know what good looks like. So if you take AI to its absolute extreme and you kind of go, give it a really, really good brief, give it some really, really good constraints, make it think and act like your business, the very, very best people in your business, and you give it what good looks like when it's finished, AI could be incredible. But I just don't think that we're thinking about it properly yet.
How so? Because a lot of construction businesses, I suppose business owners, are reluctant to use AI because, traditionally construction's a relatively archaic industry, and a lot of the people who own the businesses are maybe older people who have worked in a certain way, so it's quite a big change for them to have to introduce something. And a frequent term is like don't fix something that's not broken, I suppose. Yeah. So what could be maybe a quick introduction to AI that they could introduce into their business if they're not using it already?
So I think one of the best places to start, and again, look, there becomes a why question. Why do we need it? Is it right for us? I think that there is always resistance to change. It's a real it's a challenge out there. I think you've got 50% of business owners who are just up for change. Bring it on, fantastic. This is going to be amazing, full of innovation. And you've got 50% of business owners who are kind of like, oh, hang on a second, why do we need to do that? We're okay as we were. 85% of the world's population don't like change. Right? So if you kind of load all the DISC profiles and insights and Myers-Briggs or whatever else it may be, there is a massive just element of we like things the way they are, comfort zones. But this is the one time, and it's my plea, I suppose, to everybody that might be listening, it's the one time where you cannot bury your head in the sand. It is coming fast, and it will be the greatest differentiator in terms of competitors that there has ever been. Wow. So I think that they need to, find the easiest thing to go and give it a try with. So try a post in ChatGPT, for just example. Something that they currently do, and they do it quite regularly, but it's what I would call almost like a low-value task. We just have to do this. It's a necessary evil of winning some work. Give it a try and see what comes out. Because generalized AI, where you just ask it a question, you get an answer, I can understand why there is all the sort of resistance. That doesn't really sound like us, and that's not very good, and that's a bit Americanized. But get an agent where it's trained to talk your language. It understands your values. It understands your tone of voice. It looks at your previous posts. It understands what your point of difference is versus your competitors. And then get it to write you a proposal. My God, it's mind-blowing what it can do in the time which it can do it. But it's all about constraints. But I think if you start with, if you took let's say take a graph, right, for everybody that's listening as opposed to watching, right? So let's say it's on an XY axis. So your X is value and your Y is skill. And look, our top people, we want them to be in the top right-hand corner as long in the day as possible. High skill, high value. The challenge is we all have to do stuff. So, and it starts coming back down. So it goes lower skill and lower value because it's just things that have to be able to do in order to facilitate our role. But therefore, we keep on employing new people, highly paid, potentially therefore inefficient, doing a load of stuff that they probably shouldn't be doing. And if AI could take some of that stuff, my God, imagine what you could free people up to do. So I kind of see AI as, I think we've got one camp that is going, it's going to take all the human element away. And I've got the other side, which it can make us significantly more human. That was going to be my next question, or my next point of conversation was how, I know you said there you can have AI agents that you can train who can understand you. Is a lot of friction and I suppose a lot of reluctance for people is the fact that does that take away the human element? And I, relate this back to the construction industry because it's very much based off of relationships and the human connection. I suppose every industry is, but obviously I'm relating to construction, but it's the relationships and it's the human connection with people. And like a construction projects and contracts are, done between two people and there's a handshake and there's contract signed, etc. So the reluctance is very much that you lose the human connection and the human element. And then do people look at you and think, he's lost the human element? Are they too far? If you let it. And I think this is the thing, it's about, if you're starting out with a very, very clear picture about why you want AI and where you're going to use it, and like with any growth, I suppose, I've heard people on your podcast before now saying about, but that guy got us a bit corporate, or we went a bit corporate, and it's almost like a negative thing. Corporate's a funny term, isn't it? Because all really corporate just means is we have some good controls and we have probably some good systems. It doesn't mean that you've got to change your culture to be corporate. It's just like, what was the good practice bit of it? So I look at AI and kind of in a similar sort of way and say, growth with AI, but never at the expense of. What are the things that we'll say, we'll never let it do that. We'll never let it screen CVs. We'll never let it do the interview process. I'll never let it go and speak to one of my clients on my behalf. But if it did all the stuff so I could go and have even better conversations with my clients, my God, what could that look like? Because I think that when I speak to people who run businesses and you ask them, would you like to be able to do a bit more of this? Often it is, but I haven't got the time. Yeah. And I think AI actually gets rid of the I haven't got the time reason. So if you imagine now if it was doing significantly more of the grunt type stuff so that I could go and have fantastic face-to-face conversations, I could go and see all of my clients on a really regular basis, form better relationships with them than I've ever had in the past. Wow, what could that look like? So I think it actually facilitates us to become more human as long as we plan for it to.
It's a good spin. It's a good spin you put on that because...
By the way, no shares in AI.
In a positive way, it is a good spin because that is the major reluctance really is like I don't want to lose the human element to the business because the business has been built off humans, I suppose you could call it that.
Yeah.
So if you were to create and this is in a ideological world, if you were to create your perfect construction business as such, which utilizes AI, like how would that look? As we're looking at it from like a holistic perspective, I suppose. And the only reason why I asked the question is because I want to try and cover it for people who are thinking like, well, there's a good entry level there that Simon's mentioned of how we can utilize it, but how could I foresee it in the future looking with an introduction of AI and implementing it in different areas? Yeah.
So I think that I would break the business into before, during and after. So everything that happens to win a client, everything that happens whilst I've got a client and I'm delivering a project, and everything that should happen from a customer service and a re-engagement, referrals and all that kind of stuff afterwards. And if you break it into areas, it becomes a little bit easier to understand, well, where could it have its part to play? So I think it could help in terms of lead generation. It could certainly happen in terms of consistency of message, consistency of activity, how we follow up with people. I think when we are in the pricing stages, looking back at historical quotes, understanding what best practice looked like, lessons learned from when we did or we didn't make money, how did that then formulate back into our estimating process, which we quite often don't do enough of, again, because we're usually busy, on to the next one, so we don't look back. I think there's a massive opportunity, therefore, in the follow-up process to make sure that we're consistently converting and understanding why we didn't. So again, big data to understand why we didn't. Once you're into the job, it's the quality of briefing, it's the quality of documentation, it's did I have time to brief it properly, or did I give somebody the back of a piece of paper to be able to brief it? Because the comms is where the money gets made or lost, I think. Our quality of comms on site is the ability to, all the assumptions about, well, I thought I told you that, or surely you knew that, or, well, that was obvious, wasn't it? Well, it's only obvious if it was obvious. So I think that I would look at it if I could take away all of my low-value tasks, and I could only, therefore, put my people with high skill and high value of the things that only they can do, that would formulate, I suppose, what my structure started to look like. But my biggest question of all would be, how many more external conversations did we manage to get out of having AI in place? Because I think that's going to be the differentiator. There will be some that will go very systems-based and very AI-led. And look, we've all got a sixth sense. We can do it now, can't we? I think that's been written by AI. I think that's been done by that. So we've got this quite intuitive sense in us. And it might get to the point where we don't care. I don't know. But at the moment we do. Yeah. Because we sort of fear it a little bit.
Yeah.
But if we could have even better quality of conversations and I got to see my suppliers and my clients and my prospects more regularly, wow, I think that could be incredible.
You mentioned something just a second ago about the lead generation perspective and the following up. And I mean, you've worked with so many different businesses, loads of, like construction businesses or people that are in the industry as such. How detrimental do you think it is as to why they don't follow up so much on leads, and why do you think that they don't? Is it because they don't have a system? Is it because they don't know how to follow up type thing?
So I think that some just like as they build their businesses by accident, let's call it, nobody taught them how to be a marketer. Nobody taught them how to be a great salesperson. Nobody taught them that ultimately it's just a good system and a process to have consistent sales and marketing in place. But the usual one is we were too busy. And it's bizarre, isn't it? We spend a week pulling together a big tender document, getting all the prices. Fantastic, it's off my plate, on to the next one. And you kind of go, hang on a second. Did you follow up? What was the feedback? Yeah, how successful were we? So when the best way to get people frustrated about this and the best way to get people to change is find out how long per year you spend on prospecting. So if you've got a 25% conversion rate, let's just make the maths nice and easy, 75% of your time spent is to get a no. And when you look at it like that, you go, my God, that's expensive, isn't it? So should we be doing it in the first place? Was it ever the right job for us? Could we get better at it? Could we actually put slightly more time in it and get an even better outcome? But we just kind of accept that, well, that's the going rate in our industry, as opposed to challenge it. So system and process is massive. I'm not personally a massive system and process person, but like anybody, I suppose you can walk into somebody's business and go, well, something's not quite right here. I'm great at being able to get other people to do it. I'm not personally that great at doing it myself. I don't really enjoy it that much.
Do as I say, not as I do, as some people say.
Yeah, but I'm very, very aware that it's a shortcoming in me. So therefore, I find ways to be able to either get the support in place to make sure I've got a great system in place, or I've got great people that can do it on my behalf, as opposed to just burying my head in the sand and say I'm not very good at it. And I think that that's a massive, again, part of knowing yourself as a business owner, knowing where your strengths are and your superpowers, knowing where some of your weaknesses are in yourself and your team, and have you actually planned to make sure that you quash some of that, as opposed to just get more people in the business that are like you.
I'm now going to jump back into AI just because I'm almost logging questions in my mind as we're talking, and I don't want to let this one go. But so obviously our industry is it's very behind in terms of the use of AI. As I'm sure you're well aware, there's probably other industries that are so much more advanced in terms of utilising it. How detrimental do you think it could be to a business by not utilising AI now? And then how far do you reckon that can get in terms of the detrimental effect in 5-10 years' time? I
think it's going to be just the most enormous compound interest impact of it. So if you're already slightly behind now, it only takes somebody to kind of get on board with it. Now, so it's moving at such a rapid rate. Yeah. It's such a rapid rate. The things that it couldn't do 3 months ago versus the things that it can do now. And I've worked with an architect's practice before now, for instance, who the amount of time and money they used to spend on pulling together just concepts. And now they can literally push a button and say, give me a living roof, give me a version with this, give me a mixed use version of it, give me something with a multi-story car park on top of it. And it's literally a click, 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 then there's my 5 different versions. Now, in order to be able to get to the point where the client's kind of going, oh my God, yeah, that's fantastic. That's the route I want you to go down and develop. My God, how much time and effort and money have you potentially saved in that? Now, that couldn't be done. It was very, very obvious it was AI, even just a few months ago. So it's going at such a rapid rate that the gap will become exponentially large between those that have got it and those that haven't. And therefore, it's, I suppose, a bit like the first person that bought a machine to do something as opposed to the person that was doing it by hand. All of a sudden, you've got this massive cost advantage, this massive efficiency improvement, this huge capacity opportunity, and somebody else is still there going, well, just give me a hammer and I'll do it myself. No, why don't you use the nail gun and the machine that can do it on your back? So I think we're in that kind of space right now. I think that 2026 will become the one that just opens up a chasm of a gap between those that have been exploring it and those that haven't. And primarily it's because I think you can break the overhead cycle. Right. I think you can now grow, but you can actually flatten out your overhead curve. And that is going to be the biggest difference. So all of a sudden, the profitability that businesses can start to bring into play to reinvest in other things, that's the bit. I think there'll be cash and profit in businesses like never before. Yeah, because, speaking from personal experience, and I suppose people listening might be able to sort of relate to it as well, is the amount of time, therefore, like wages and money wasted on mundane tasks it's sometimes untrackable. You can't really track it because you might have 5 or 10 people in the office who are writing a proposal or writing a post on LinkedIn or whatever they're doing, risk assessments and method statements, and it's taken them a couple of hours. And if you translate it into time and into wages, it's thousands and thousands of pounds. Yeah. But I suppose because you don't know the cold, hard
monetary effect of it and you don't know how much it's cost you, some people might think of it like, well, it's,
It's just the cost of doing business.
Yeah, it's just, literally.
Just the cost of doing business.
Just the cost of doing business, rather than, I suppose, if someone was to actually try and somehow take the money out of their pocket and give the money back that AI could, reimburse them for, I suppose everyone would jump onto it.
Wouldn't it be fascinating if we were allowed to walk around with cash in our pocket? Right, and every time you ask somebody to do something, you have to pay them there and then.
But no one would ever ask anyone to do
You wouldn't ask me to do anything, would you? Because it'd be so visual, it'd be so blatantly obvious. That, like, why am I giving somebody £100 to go and do this?
Yeah.
But we just don't think about it because it's all just, it's just part and parcel of the overhead that's associated with growing a business. So I think we have this amazing opportunity right now to really, really challenge it. And it will become a huge, huge differentiator. Huge differentiator. I think it does come back to, one of my clients recently said to us, but written into our values is we are human, and yet we're talking about AI. And I go, well, it's only going to be a problem if you allow it to become less human as opposed to more.
Yeah, but you put a very good positive spin on it earlier, which I know we touched on, the fact that it will allow you to become more human as such, because you can go and have the human...
If you plan it to.
If you plan it to, yeah.
If you plan it to.
Not only can you train the AI to act on behalf of you, I suppose, you can also relinquish the unhuman task that you've got to do, like the mundane task, to allow you to be human and go out and meet prospects. And
where do I create more value?
Yeah.
What's my hourly rate when I'm out seeing clients versus my hourly rate when I'm writing something in the business, when I'm filling out a spreadsheet? But again, the intelligence, I'm harping on a little bit about data, but because I think it allows you to either ask great questions or answer great questions. When you know what the data's telling you, you can challenge it. So I was with a kitchen company recently. We were talking about, what's the average lag from a lead to an inquiry to sitting down for a design appointment to getting a yes from somebody to actually installing a kitchen. And you go, God, that's going to take a while to get hold of all that information. And it's going, well, we've kind of got the CRM system. We've got a couple of different spreadsheets that are running outside of it. Yeah. Let's put it all in and ask the question. And then we were finding out that if a kitchen's going to convert, the conversion rate from the lead to the design appointment happens within a week. If it happens within a week, we've got a 50% greater chance of it actually converting. If they decide within 3 days of finishing the design appointment, right, we're going to get the kitchen's going to be installed by this particular date. And all of a sudden we were getting like lag, decision making, best inquiries, lead source, where they come from, which ones are converting the best, which designers converting at the highest rate. Yeah. All of this stuff, and it's not to suddenly say, this designer's doing really well and that one's doing really poorly. But you can turn around and go, what can we learn from that person that would actually bring up the level of this one? So your standards come up across the whole of the business. Now imagine that, if you can kind of understand, why is this person managing to get 2 quotes out and this one's getting 1 quote out? What are they doing differently? Why are they converting and those ones not? Well, they write this on the end of their quote. Oh my God, didn't see that before. So I think it allows us, again, to challenge what good looks like and really, really push the standard. I'm a huge fan of what it can tell you historically that allows you to tell you what you want from a forecasting point of view. Because forecasting for me is the holy grail in anybody's industry. Yeah. Can I predict with any sort of certainty what life is going to look like a few months down the line? And if you can use everything historically, so well, typically all of this happens. So therefore I can kind of put here's my confirmed work into my spreadsheet, and here's all the stuff we're quoting, and it quotes and converts at this kind of rate, and it usually converts in this kind of period. Well, I can almost come up with a bit of a theoretical forecast just based on those numbers now. As opposed to anything that was in my gut, I can actually use some data and some science.
Do you think construction business owners in general have a bit of a lack of aptitude to forecast going forward? I know we touched on the number side of things, but not even just like the number side of things, but like looking at where they want to be in 5 years' time and the type of personnel they want to have in the business and the type of projects they want to carry out. Do you think it's more of just just fumble along and just see what happens type thing, rather than actually forecast and design what type of business you want in 5 or 10 years' time?
Your word there about design is the absolute right one. I think sometimes we let things happen to us as opposed to design what we want it to look like. And that's about the intention. If you're super clear about, I want it to look like this size, and I'm really, really clear why, and I understand what the benefit is going to look like when I'm there, so now it's kind of like it's personal. I've got more of a motivation to want to do it as opposed to, that would be nice. Right? Need and want are very, very different things. When you really need something to happen, it has to happen. It has to look like this, as opposed to, okay, I'm fat and happy. It's kind of okay. Don't really need it to happen. There's no real motivation in, I'm kind of okay. But if you get a little bit upset about it and you want it and it's personal and therefore it's motivating, well, then you're kind of like, you're clear about what the end game looks like. And then it's just a case of going, okay, well, if it needs to look like that in 5 years' time, what's it going to look like in 3? It's going to look like in 3. What's it going to look like in 1? If it's going to look like in 1, what on earth are we going to do in 2026 which is going to facilitate it? It now becomes a purposeful plan with some real key milestones that kind of like, they're right here in your conscious all of a sudden, as opposed to, it's back here somewhere, it's all right, doesn't really matter either way. When it's right up here, I can't tell you how many people write a plan and then tell me they've had a lucky conversation. Oh, you wouldn't believe who I bumped into the other day. You wouldn't believe what happened to us. And I go, oh, I think I might. Because it's like your filter's been removed, you start to see it and you're looking for it. Probably the same conversation you'd have had last week, but it was just a conversation then. All of a sudden now it's an opportunity to take you somewhere. So I think once it becomes purposeful and it's written down and it's a clear plan, I think anybody can get there. It's just that I think we don't design it necessarily the way that we would like it. It just happens to us.
Well, so you've been coaching for 16 years, did you
16
say?
years, yeah. I'm starting to feel proper old now.
What's kind of like, what's your plans like going forward with the coaching? Are you just are you taking on more clientele? Are you looking to, because by the sounds of it, you've obviously got a massive passion for it. So are you kind of looking to scale your business, I suppose, as well as other people's at the same time? Yeah,
so the funny thing about coaching from my perspective is that there is a limited capacity. So I'm developing some products behind the scenes which are a bit perhaps more mass market. So it's like, how can lots of people get the education side of things that they might require in order to be able to grow their business? So that might be a lower entry type stuff. But coaching's right for different businesses at different times within perhaps their growth curve. So I've got some businesses that I worked with in the early stages, then they kind of got enough education, went and did some stuff on their own for a little bit, come back now because we're in that next stage of significantly growing. And when you're in that, where most of my clients probably sit in that kind of like 1 to 10 sort of growth period, a lot changes.
Was that 1 to 10 million?
1 to 10 million, yeah. I've got one at 100 million, somebody else at like 25, and smallest one's 500,000, but most are in that kind of 1 to 10, so they're quite rapidly growing. And all the things that got you there are not the things that are going to get you onto the next stage. So there's a lot of letting go of stuff. There's a lot of that used to be okay. There's a lot of sometimes, sadly, that the people that got us to this point aren't necessarily the people that are going to get us to the next stage. So there's a lot of letting go, there's a lot of change, there's a lot of things that have to happen. But my average is probably about 2.5 to 3 years that somebody works with me. So there's always an element of, okay, who's next, what's happening? And what I used to think was busy from my perspective, when you take on your first kind of couple of clients from a coaching perspective, probably just like in your industry, oh my God, how are we going to deal with it? Have I got the capacity? Have I got the mind share? And then you're working with 15 all of a sudden, you're kind of going, okay, and who's next? Because you just get this passion for, if I can help somebody get there a little bit quicker and a little bit easier than perhaps doing it on their own, then wouldn't that be great?
Interesting question, just because you've just mentioned that you work with people or somebody who runs a £100 million company, and work with people who run a £1 million company. Like, do they have? I know it's obviously relatable to the size of the business, but do they actually have different problems, or are they the same problems just magnified 100 times? If that makes
really
sense.
They're not even magnified 100 times. It's just you put a couple of zeros on the end of it. You get 100 people in a room who are business owners and ask them what are their primary challenges right now, and they'll say people, strategy in uncertain times, cash and profit, squeezed margins, skill gaps, the ability to find great people and keep them. There'll be the same challenges regardless of industry. And that's why sometimes it can be relatively easy to coach lots of different industries because the same principles apply. AI is, again, another perfect example. There isn't a day that goes by where I don't have the conversation in any business about AI and what it means to them, regardless of sector. Structures are different. Layers of management become different. Things like, are we going to become an EOT business? Are we going to have a share option? How do we reward people? How do we make sure that we keep people? Acquisition, are we going to be bought? What does an exit strategy look like? So different things come in at different times. So I think when you're in that kind of like the early stages, it's, grow, survive, make sure you've got cash. Then it's all about systems and processes and people. And then it becomes about, kind of exit and legacy and change. So different things at different times.
It's funny.
But you wouldn't believe how many things are similar.
Well, it's funny because you always think like your industry has its own unique problems.
Yeah.
I suppose it's niche uniqueness, if that's a phrase, I suppose. No, but holistically looking at it, I suppose it's exactly the same. I might say in our industry, we're struggling with labour, like there's not enough bricklayers. But like that's niche to construction. There's not enough bricklayers in the industry. It's a real trouble with the business. But then I suppose someone in, I don't know, running a marketing agency might be like, there's not enough designers, graphic designers. And it's the same problem, but we all think, we just think our problems are unique to our industry.
Yeah, they're just unique but different.
Yeah.
They're nuanced.
Yeah,
they are
that's
nuanced.
The word, yeah.
And I think that sometimes we have to be a little bit careful because we kind of collude a little bit. And it's why I don't pick a particular industry and say, we're going to become the expert in the construction industry, for instance. Because if you're not careful, you kind of go, and I get what your problems are. Of course, bricklayers are an issue, as opposed to why bricklayers are an issue. What is it that we've got to do differently? Have we got to create an academy? Have we got to get a load of businesses together and create some sort of alliance that's going to be able to sort out this issue once and for all, because industry isn't on its own? So I love the ability to be able to kind of go, there's something happening over here in this sector, and this sector's not even talking about it. Why don't we take something that is almost commonplace over there, and we could disrupt the hell out of this market over here if we just did that? But we tend to kind of go, in my industry, with my challenges, with my competitors, my frustrations.
Blinkers on,
and we don't look outside a little bit wider and just go and go, just business generally. What's going on?
I know we've touched a lot on AI as such, and I know I'm going to keep talking about it just because
it's only because I think it's the tsunami that's coming.
Yeah.
That you're kind of like, protect yourself.
Yeah, and I mean,
about it.
I've been listening to so many podcasts recently, and that seems to be, I don't know if the algorithm's got me, but it seems to be all that's coming onto my algorithm in terms of podcasts. So like I was listening to the Diary of a CEO the other day, who recording with Tony Robbins, and there's loads of other podcasts.
He's very fearful, isn't he?
Yeah, and
rightly so.
And I'm looking at Tony Robbins and thinking, if you're saying this, I've got so much respect for someone like that, who generally, I think, you never know people, but generally looks like he's trying to help people. It makes me think as well, it must be serious. I mean, I was listening to one where there was a Ukrainian gentleman who worked in AI security, I think, maybe. Yeah. He was on the Diary of a CEO, and I'm going to butcher this, so like I hope this is right, but
it's going to be a good quote. Looking forward to this one.
I'm pretty sure he said that within the next, I'm sure it was by 2035 or 2040, I can't remember, but 99% of jobs, if it continues to go at the rate it's going at, will be redundant. Yeah. So there'll only be 1% of jobs as we know it today will be left.
It's nuts, isn't it?
I couldn't wrap my head around that. I was just bemused by it.
You've only got, I suppose, to look at where it's headed and the speed at which it's headed there.
Yeah.
And Trump, bless him, and all the unbelievable things that are going on in the world at the moment. There is a race for AI. And the belief is, obviously, whoever owns the supremacy with AI will own economic wealth. So therefore, build power stations, build data centers, build whatever you need in order to get to this kind of like generative AI piece, which is where it starts to think about the things that we can't even begin to think about. And it's a bit like talking about infinity within space. You kind of go, I don't know what I don't know, and therefore I can't even comprehend it. You've got AI talking to AI. It's created its own language now between servers, because why on earth would you listen to English? Yeah. So there's a whole load of stuff that's coming. I think your industry is relatively safe because there's a lot within it. You kind of go, you physically need to do stuff, and that's great. And that's why I say that there will be all the support mechanisms that sit around it. You can either look at it and go, is it going to take jobs? I'm not a fan of AI looking at taking jobs at all. In every business where we have an AI conversation, is what does that allow people now to do? Does that allow people to do something differently? The challenge will be for those that are stuck in their ways, that will kind of put their head in the sand and go, no, that's my job and that's what I do. And you're going to go, well, okay, you probably haven't got one then, which is terribly sad. But there is this wave coming, and the biggest challenge that we're going to have is, well, we're getting quite philosophical here. There's one piece which is going to be, going to have to have a living wage. So governments are going to have to start paying people to stay at home.
It's a UBI, isn't it?
It's a UBI,
Yeah, I was listening. I was watching that the other day as well.
But that's such a strange one. That's why Tony Robbins was so concerned about it, because from a purpose perspective, what is there to get out of bed for in the morning?
Nothing. You get
just get a salary.
And also you look at that and just think like, how would that affect society as such? Because society has a structure, and those structures are in place for people to, like grow in society, and like people can earn more money to do X, Y, and Z, and people create purpose within themselves to be able to achieve things.
Yeah.
Like,
And now you've got to be flatlined.
Yeah, surely there's nothing. He's right in terms of that. There's no, where's the purpose coming from? Where's the drive? And you can just wake up and you have a set amount of like financial wealth that you can spend is same as the next person next to you, and you can have whatever you want, I suppose, within the remit of the world, and everyone's the same. So it's like, how do
I can find
evolve
100 things to keep me awake at night about AI.
Yeah.
But I've also got this kind of one about, at every point in history, it's gone through similar kind of things. So, farming with animals versus machinery, uproar, absolute uproar. Riots, all sorts of things. Then you get the kind of industrial revolution comes along. Oh, absolute uproar. Oh my God, we're all going to lose our jobs. We think the jobs become different. So there's part of me that kind of goes, I don't think it'd be the 99. Well, I think there might be 50, but it will retrain in terms of, okay, so how do I get the very, very best out of AI? It will create a whole industry of new jobs that are coming through. But right here, right now, and I suppose it's the urgency piece, is that, if we all kind of sit back and wait and see what happens, there'll be a whole load of people that will have a huge competitive advantage. It's not the answer to everything. It's just a tool. It's no different to when a spreadsheet turned up. Yeah, it just can do some things that allows us to be able to grow in a different type of way.
It's just the unknown, I suppose, for a lot of people. That's why there's so much fear.
It's the fear of the unknown.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, is it?
You I know you sent us a link out for an AI retreat. So do you teach this? Is it something that you?
It's relatively new from my perspective, but I suppose if you look at what's my role to play, my role is to make businesses more profitable, make them easier to run, ensure that they fulfil their purpose in life, and to look over the horizon at things that are coming that might disrupt it. I can't not talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think that people need to pause and kind of go, if I started my business today, knowing what I now know that AI could potentially do, would I design it differently? And I think that that's the opportunity that we've got at the moment, is pause and kind of go, right, if it was embedded in every element of my business, what would it look like? How would I redesign it now? So rather than kind of like, where can I shoehorn it in? I think almost start with if it was AI first. And your great question earlier about what sort of structure would you have if you had an AI utopian kind of infrastructure? That's, I think, the biggest question to ask. So running a retreat that is a couple of days in order to be able to kind of go pause, redesign your business right now, what does it look like, and then bring it back a little bit, what are the things we're going to put in place now.
And is that open to all business owners?
Open to all business owners, yeah. We're running it 22nd to the 24th of April.
Okay.
So it's only a couple of months away.
And then how do people, if they're listening, if they want to join, how would they find you?
If they search me up, Simon Bucket Business Thinkers, or if they find me on LinkedIn, or find me, they'll find 10xthinking.ai, which is the website for that particular event. I just don't think we can ignore it.
Simon, it's been a pleasure to dive into the business coach's mind, and it's been interesting. I didn't actually think the conversation was going to go so far in the direction of AI, but it's the reason why I wanted it to be fair as we were going was because I was relating a lot of the conversation to the business, and I was thinking like, oh, okay, we could do that as well. So I wanted to keep it going, because I think our industry is very traditionally archaic, and it is very much archaic in the methods and the methodology that it uses to run business, I suppose, and how it operates. Yeah. So I think a lot of people listening who are typically in construction may find a lot of value in the last 30 minutes of this podcast.
Well, if you think about, I suppose, perhaps almost like a final point, what's the biggest influence on the bottom line is probably efficiency. We said that we're going to do it in this amount of time, we can actually do it in that amount of time. So it's an over-recovery moment. AI can facilitate over-recovery. So if you look at that, your biggest profitability improvement, your biggest efficiency gain that you could potentially get at the moment, we could get guys to work a bit harder. We could be a little bit faster. The game-changing stuff is probably going to be the AI.
Got to leave it on that. Thank you so much for coming down.
Pleasure.
Yeah, it's been brilliant to chat to you, and I really appreciate you obviously sharing your thoughts and opinions, and there's so much value. I can't wait to re-listen to this podcast and I'm already sat recording it. So thanks so much for coming on.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Simon.